Zoera wanted to do something sweet for her husband, so one evening she decided to come home earlier than usual. She imagined the look on his face when he saw her walk through the door with a warm smile. But the picture she had in her mind broke into pieces the moment she stepped inside. Instead of joy, she met silence that quickly turned into whispers. Walking further, her heart sank when she saw her husband in the arms of her younger sister. The shock held her still for a moment, and then pain washed over her like a wave. She couldn't find her voice, but her tears told the story she could not speak. Without a single word, she turned and left the house, leaving both of them stunned. For days, Zoera stayed quiet, carrying the heavy weight of betrayal in her chest. She did not shout, she did not fight, and she did not beg for explanations. Instead, she let the silence build while she prepared her own answer. Behind that calm face, she was holding something powerful, something neither her husband nor her sister had ever imagined. When the moment finally came, Zoera returned. This time she carried no gifts, no warm smile, only a simple folder in her hand. They watched her walk in, expecting tears, expecting anger, but she surprised them in a way they could never forget. She placed the folder on the table and slowly opened it. Inside were inheritance papers from her late uncle, naming her as the sole owner of the very house they were standing in. Her husband's face turned pale, and her sister's hands began to tremble. The home they thought belonged to him was hers all along. The man who had betrayed her now lived under her roof, and the sister who had stabbed her in the back was caught in the same trap. With calm strength, Zoera told them that every wall, every room, every corner of the house was hers. They could no longer look at her as weak or helpless, because in that moment she was the one holding all the power. The betrayal had cut her deeply, but the inheritance gave her the strength to rise above the pain. Zoera did not need revenge through anger. Her truth alone was enough to change everything. Abiola arrived home earlier than planned, her hands filled with gifts she had picked carefully for her husband. She wanted to surprise him, to show him love in a simple but meaningful way. She imagined his smile, the way his eyes would light up when he saw her thoughtful gesture. But the moment she opened the door, the world she had built in her heart collapsed. The sound of laughter echoed from the living room, a sound that should have warmed her soul, yet it pierced her instead. She stepped closer, and what she saw froze her in place. Her husband was holding her younger sister, the very person she trusted most. The gifts dropped from her hands, scattering across the floor, but neither of them moved to pick them up. Her husband tried to speak, her sister tried to explain, but Abiola's silence was louder than any words they could say. She looked at them with eyes full of disappointment, not anger, because betrayal had already spoken for itself. Without shouting, without a single argument, she turned around and walked away, leaving behind the home she once thought was safe. Days passed, and while her husband believed she would return broken, Abiola was working on something far greater. She did not spend her nights in tears. She spent them preparing for the one place where she could strike without lifting her voice. The board meeting of the company her husband depended on was scheduled soon, and every shareholder would be there. When the day came, Abiola entered the boardroom with quiet confidence. Her husband was already seated, surprised to see her walk in, but his surprise quickly turned into confusion when the chairman handed her the documents. In front of every member, she stood tall and revealed the truth. She was now the majority shareholder. The room fell silent as her husband's face drained of color. He had mocked her, betrayed her, and believed she was powerless, yet she now controlled the very company that defined his pride. Abiola did not need to shout or point fingers. Her power was in the calm way she held the papers, the steady way she declared her new position. The woman he thought he had broken was the one standing above him. The betrayal that was meant to destroy her only opened the door to her victory. And in that room, everyone saw who truly held the power. Chica unexpectedly returned from her business trip, her heart full of excitement as she thought of surprising her husband. She wanted to see the joy on his face when he realized she had come back earlier than planned. Carrying her small bag, she quietly walked through the door, hoping to find him waiting. Instead, what she saw shattered her completely. Her husband was not alone, and the woman beside him was her own younger sister. Their laughter turned into silence the moment they noticed her standing there, frozen in shock. The betrayal hit her like a heavy stone, leaving her breathless. She did not scream, nor did she ask questions. The truth was already before her eyes. Chica dropped her bag to the floor, and with trembling hands, she wiped the tears forming in her eyes. Her husband tried to explain, her sister stuttered excuses, but Chica turned and walked away without a word. The pain was too deep, but inside her silence, she was already planning how to face them. In the days that followed, her family began preparing for a large gathering to honor her late father's memory. Everyone expected Chica to come quietly, perhaps still broken by what she had witnessed. Her husband and sister carried on with their hidden guilt, thinking they had crushed her spirit. But Chica carried something powerful, a truth that none of them had expected. When the gathering day arrived, the hall was filled with relatives, friends, and elders. Chica entered gracefully, her presence drawing every eye. Her husband and sister sat nervously, avoiding her gaze. When it was her turn to speak, she stepped forward with calm strength and pulled out a sealed envelope. From it, she revealed official documents signed by her late father himself. Gasps filled the room as she announced that she had inherited his diamond company, making her the rightful owner and leader of the family's greatest legacy. Her husband's face turned pale, her sister lowered her head in shame, and the entire hall erupted in whispers. Chica's voice remained steady as she declared that her father's trust and blessing were with her, not with those who betrayed her. In that moment, she rose above the pain, proving she was not a woman broken by betrayal but a woman crowned with power. The inheritance was not just wealth, it was her victory, her shield, and her gift of strength. Oluchi left work earlier than usual, her heart light with excitement as she carried a small gift bag in her hand. She had been thinking about her husband all day, imagining how happy he would be when she showed up unexpectedly. She wanted to see his smile, to feel his arms around her, and to spend a quiet evening together. But when she walked through the door of their home, the sight that greeted her tore her world apart. Her husband was not alone, and the woman with him was her very own sister. Their laughter stopped the moment they saw her, and the silence that followed was heavier than any words. Oluchi's hand shook as the bag slipped from her fingers and fell to the ground. She stared at them, her heart breaking, but she said nothing. Her husband tried to explain. Her sister looked guilty, but Oluchi simply turned and walked out, leaving them behind in their shame. The betrayal was deep, yet she chose not to waste her tears on them. Instead, she carried her pain with quiet strength, planning how to face them in her own way. In the days that followed, whispers spread within the family, but Oluchi kept to herself. Her calmness worried those who had wronged her, but they did not know what she was preparing. Her late grandfather's will had been with her for some time, a secret she never felt the need to reveal. But now, with betrayal burning in her chest, she knew the time had come. When both families gathered at the estate for a routine meeting, Oluchi arrived with papers in her hand. The atmosphere was tense as she walked into the large sitting room, her husband and sister sitting side by side, still hoping she would remain silent. But she did not. In front of everyone, Oluchi laid the will on the table and read it aloud. Her grandfather had entrusted the estate to her, making her the rightful owner of the very property both families relied upon for their wealth and comfort. Gasps filled the room, and all eyes turned to her. Her husband's pride melted into shock, her sister's shame deepened, and the rest of the family could not hide their astonishment. Oluchi stood tall, her voice steady, proving she was not broken by betrayal but strengthened by truth. The estate was hers, and with it, her power and dignity were restored before everyone. Amarachi canceled her outing that evening, thinking it would be a sweet idea to surprise her husband. She imagined walking into their home, smiling as she handed him the small treats she had bought along the way. She expected warmth, but what she found instead left her frozen in shock. As she opened the door quietly, her heart stopped. There was her husband, and by his side was her own sister. Their closeness, their whispers, and their guilt-filled faces told her everything she needed to know. The world she had built came crashing down in a single moment. Her hands trembled, and the bag she carried slipped from her grasp. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed in the silent room. Her husband stuttered. Her sister tried to speak, but Amarachi's silence was sharper than any words. Without shouting, without asking why, she simply turned and walked away. Behind her calm steps was a storm of pain, but also a quiet strength rising from within. For days she kept her distance. Those around her believed she would crumble under the weight of betrayal, but Amarachi was not planning to bow down to pain. Instead, She was preparing for something larger, something that would silence every whisper and every doubt. The charity gala was fast approaching, an event where her husband prided himself on his influence and status. What he did not know was that Amarachi held a truth that would change everything. On the night of the gala, the hall sparkled with lights, music, and the chatter of important guests. Her husband moved confidently among them, unaware of what was about to unfold. When Amarachi entered, her presence drew attention. She looked calm, graceful, yet her eyes carried fire. As the microphone was passed to her for a short speech, she stepped forward with steady hands. In front of the crowd, she announced that she had inherited the entire fund behind the event, a legacy her family had entrusted solely to her. Gasps filled the hall, whispers spread like fire, and all eyes turned to her husband, who now stood speechless. Her sister lowered her head in shame. Amarachi's voice was firm as she declared her position, her strength, and her ownership. In that moment, the woman they had betrayed rose higher than ever, her dignity shining brighter than the lights of the gala. Her silence had become her revenge, and her truth had made her untouchable. Adesela returned earlier than expected from her short trip, carrying a smile on her face and excitement in her heart. She had planned to surprise her husband with her sudden arrival, thinking he would be happy to see her. But as she reached their home, she was told he had gone out. Curious, she decided to find out where. And soon her steps led her to a luxury hotel. She walked through the grand doors, her heels clicking against the floor, unaware of the storm waiting for her. When she entered one of the suites, her world shattered. Her husband was there, not alone, but with her own sister. The sight froze her in disbelief, and the pain cut deep into her chest. The man she trusted and the sister she loved had betrayed her in the cruelest way. Her husband tried to cover his shame with excuses. Her sister tried to hide behind tears, but Adesela said nothing. Her silence was stronger than their lies. Without a word, she turned and walked out, leaving them in shock, wondering what she would do next. Hours passed, and the tension in the air grew heavy. They thought she would return with anger, maybe even collapse under the weight of heartbreak. But Adesela was not a woman to be broken. She had something far greater than their betrayal. That same evening, she reappeared at the hotel, this time with a calm face and a folder in her hand. She walked into the lobby confidently, drawing every eye toward her. Her husband and sister were still there, waiting nervously. Without hesitation, she opened the folder and laid the documents on the table for all to see. The papers carried her name, proving that she was the rightful owner of the hotel itself. Gasps spread through the lobby as the truth sank in. The very place they had chosen for betrayal belonged to her. Her husband's pride vanished, her sister's face turned pale, and the staff now looked at Adesela with deep respect. She did not need to raise her voice or shed another tear. Her power was in the truth she carried, and her dignity shone brighter than their shame. In that moment, it was clear, Adesela was not the victim of betrayal. She was the woman who stood above it all, stronger than ever. Nkem went home earlier than usual that evening, carrying fresh ingredients in her basket. She wanted to cook dinner for her husband as a surprise, imagining the joy on his face when he tasted her meal. With a soft smile, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. But instead of the quiet home she expected, she heard hushed laughter drifting from the bedroom. Curious, she walked closer, only to find a sight that pierced her heart. Her husband was with her sister, the two people she trusted most, wrapped in betrayal. The basket slipped from her hands, and vegetables scattered across the floor. Her husband froze, his mouth opening to speak, but no words came out. Her sister's face turned pale, guilt written all over her. Nkem's chest tightened with pain, but she held her silence. She didn't shout, she didn't ask questions. She simply turned around and walked away, leaving them in a heavy silence. In the days that followed, her husband tried to act normal, pretending nothing had happened. Her sister avoided her gaze whenever they crossed paths, but Nkem carried herself with quiet strength, waiting for the right moment. What they did not know was that her late father had left her something far greater than any betrayal could take away. She had inherited control of the political party her husband proudly relied on for his status. When the grand political gathering came, the hall was filled with leaders, officials, and supporters. Her husband moved with confidence, shaking hands, smiling widely, believing he held all the influence. But then Nkem entered. her presence commanding attention. The crowd hushed as she stepped onto the stage, holding a folder in her hand. She spoke calmly, her voice steady, as she revealed her inheritance papers. They confirmed that she was the rightful owner of the party, the true heiress of her father's legacy. Gasps filled the hall. Her husband's pride vanished in an instant, his face pale as the truth sank in. Her sister lowered her head, too ashamed to look up. The very power her husband thought he controlled belonged to Kim all along. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't speak of betrayal. She simply stood strong, letting the truth speak for itself. That night, everyone saw her not as a broken wife, but as a woman who carried power, dignity, and control beyond what anyone imagined. Ifeoma decided to surprise her husband at the airport, thinking it would be a sweet moment to welcome him before his flight. She imagined his face lighting up when he saw her waiting, a smile spreading across his lips as she waved. Holding a small bag of his favorite snacks, she walked through the terminal, her heart full of love. But what she found shattered her completely. Just ahead, she saw him hand in hand with her younger sister, both of them dressed for travel, ready to board together. Her feet froze, and the bag slipped from her grip, scattering its contents across the shiny floor. Her husband's eyes widened when he saw her, guilt flashing across his face. Her sister looked away, unable to meet her gaze. Ifeoma's chest tightened, her world spinning, but she refused to cry in front of them. Without saying a single word, she turned and walked away, her silence cutting deeper than any accusation could. For days, the betrayal echoed in her mind. Everyone thought she would break down, hide herself, or lose her strength. But Ifeoma carried something they had all forgotten, a legacy her late father had left for her. While her husband was busy building his false pride, she held the real power, and soon the truth would come to light. A week later, the airline hosted a special shareholders meeting. Her husband attended proudly, boasting about his connections, unaware of what was about to happen. The room filled with executives, managers, and investors, all waiting for the announcements. When Ifeoma walked in, heads turned. She looked calm and composed, her presence commanding respect. At the right moment, she stood and revealed the inheritance papers she had kept quietly. They showed that she was now a major shareholder of the very airline her husband relied upon to impress others. Murmurs filled the room as the documents were passed around, and gasps spread when her name appeared at the top. Her husband's face turned pale, his pride collapsing in front of everyone. Her sister, who had followed him there, could not lift her eyes. Ozioma left her office earlier than usual, her heart filled with excitement as she carried a beautifully wrapped gift. It was her husband's birthday, and she wanted to surprise him with love and care. She imagined his face lighting up when she walked through the door, her presence being the best part of his day. But the moment she stepped into their home, her smile vanished. In the quiet of the house, she heard whispers and laughter that did not belong to her. She followed the sound, only to find her husband in the arms of her younger sister. The gift slipped from her hands, crashing softly to the floor. Both of them turned in shock, their guilt written across their faces. Her husband stammered. Her sister struggled to speak, but Ozioma's silence was louder than anything they could have said. She did not shout or cry. With dignity, she turned away and walked out, leaving them in the weight of their own shame. Days passed, and the birthday party her husband had planned grew closer. He pretended nothing had happened, wearing a mask of pride in front of friends and family. Her sister stayed by his side, thinking Ozioma would remain broken and powerless. But she carried a secret that neither of them expected. Documents from her late father that named her as the rightful owner of her husband's business headquarters. When the party began, the house filled with laughter, music, and guests. Her husband moved proudly through the crowd, boasting about his company, unaware of the storm about to hit. Ozioma entered gracefully, dressed with elegance and calm confidence. Everyone noticed her, and whispers spread about her strength after the betrayal. When it was time for speeches, she stepped forward. Instead of offering kind words, she pulled out a folder and revealed the inheritance papers. Gasps filled the room as she announced that she now owned the very building where her husband's company operated. The truth spread like fire through the guests, leaving her husband pale and her sister speechless. Ozioma's voice was steady, her eyes clear, as she declared her rightful ownership. In that single moment, she turned betrayal into power. The birthday that was supposed to celebrate her husband became the night everyone witnessed her strength. She was no longer just his wife. She was the woman who stood above his lies, carrying dignity and control. Ayanda rushes home early with gifts for her husband. She has been planning all week to make his day special, carefully choosing his favorite items and wrapping them with love. Her heart is full of excitement, her mind replaying the smile she hopes to see on his face when he opens the surprise. She hurries through the door, calling out his name softly, but the house is strangely quiet. As she walks toward their room, the sound of laughter makes her stop. Pushing the door slightly open, her whole world crashes when she sees her husband in the arms of her own sister. The shock freezes her. The gifts slip from her hands and fall to the floor. Her chest feels heavy, tears sting her eyes, but she swallows her pain and walks away silently, her heart shattered beyond words. That night, she lies awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the betrayal over and over. The images cut deep, yet inside her burns a quiet strength. She refuses to let her tears be her only answer. She remembers her late father's will, something her husband has always ignored. A thought strikes her, a way to rise above the humiliation and show the truth in front of everyone. She wipes her tears and begins her plan. The next evening, family and friends gather at the mansion for a party her husband proudly arranged. He welcomes the guests with confidence, his arm casually resting around her sister, as if the world belongs to him. Whispers swirl, and eyes dart between Ayanda and the shocking display. She walks in with calm grace, dressed elegantly, carrying an envelope clutched firmly in her hand. Everyone turns to watch, sensing something different in her presence. She waits until the room grows quiet, then slowly opens the papers. Her voice is steady as she reads aloud the inheritance documents that prove she is the sole owner of the mansion they stand in. Gasps fill the air, her husband's face turns pale, and her sister's smug smile disappears. The truth cuts through the crowd like lightning. The same house where she felt broken the night before now becomes her place of triumph. With dignity, she declares her right, leaving no doubt about who holds the power. The guests applaud, some in shock, others in admiration, while her husband lowers his head in shame. Ayanda stands tall, no longer the betrayed wife but the rightful owner who has claimed her place at high. My loves, 2 hearts, thanks a lot for staying till the end. Glowing star, don't forget to like, thumbs up, drop a comment, speech balloon, and hit that subscribe button bell. See you in the next story. Sparkling heart.